when you first get going with Scribus, I'm going to keep saying Scribus the whole time. When you first get going with Scribus, um, there are a number of things you can do at the outset before you start actually using it that will make your experience of using Scribus so much better. For whatever reason, at least in my opinion, the default settings, like the preferences settings, for this particular program are not. They're silly. They're like the opposite of what I would think would be a useful set of settings for it. And so I'm going to encourage you to go in. When you first get this open, it'll have the this new document thing. You can cancel it because you're not required to make a new document. It's just one of the default settings is that it should offer you to make a new document when you open it. So instead, I would go up to, in this case, it's the Scribus menu, somewhere where you can find where it says Preferences. Depending on your operating system, it'll present it in different spots. But on the Macintosh, it's under the name of the program. And there's a whole lot of settings that are in a bunch of different sections. There's this general one, which is kind of like, where do you keep things that your files that it's going to refer to? Under Document, you can set what some of these layouts are. Right now it's set to letter, but I think at least on mine, but on yours it probably says something like A4 or something like that. Yeah, how terribly inconvenient, because you're not in England. Every time you make a new document, every time you open it up, it's going to be like, oh yeah, A4 is what I think you should. I think you should have A4. So yeah, go ahead and change that to be, for you, letter or whatever you want. If you're always making posters, then it makes sense to do ledger, which is the name for the 11-inch by 17-inch paper, which is a nice poster size. And so if you say apply, I believe that makes it. Yeah, that makes it be what the setting is for the default for it. If you click defaults, it switches it back to its previous less convenient settings. So I suggest not doing that. When we get down to fonts, though, I find this to be an understandable default that they have there, to enable every system font and every other kind of font that you have installed on your computer. But in practice, when you're actually trying to make something, a document, you probably don't want to have most of those fonts enabled, just because it's a really long list. You can see most of them I have disabled. The thing that says use this font is not checked. And I only have a few that are. You can't even see which ones. Oh, here we go. Like Futura. Yeah. That's like a font that people use to design things. Some of these, they're okay. Helvetica. Yes, a well-known font that people use to design things. All different kinds of it, apparently. But I would suggest it not right now, because it took me a good 45 minutes. I felt like to go through and uncheck all the ones that I didn't want to have to see. But it's a worthwhile thing if you're coming back to the program to use to be able to just have a list of the ones you actually use, and not all the garbage ones that aren't even in your language, and the ones that to not be of high quality. Getting those out of your way visually is a good idea. Let's see, there are some other tool ones that are worth changing. Oh, so if we go to tools, and you see that within tools, I can actually, let's try this experiment. I can actually make that bigger, because magic. You can actually see that there's these different, there's the selected thing called tools, and then there's this another menu of things within this menu. This is what we call kind of cluttered interface design. But if you go and select these different ones, you can go through and change some of the default properties. So changing the default font to something that you actually like to use, I think it starts off, at least for me, it was always on Arial black. And I find that if you leave it set as the default, that Arial black somehow creeps its way into every design you do. I mean, even if it's never showing up, it's like some part of it in the document is defined as having that as its thing. I would recommend going through and changing this to something that you actually like. Try doing a design in it and spending way too much time picking out what a font you actually like is, and then go and change it, the default to being that, so that in future times you already have something you like as like the thing that's coming up. That's for the text one. For images, you're going to want to change this. I think the default is probably, what's yours say, free scaling? It's checked for you? Yeah, so I found that to be the least useful of the image settings, because what that means is that whatever size box you decided to make to represent where you want an image to go, and I'll show you this in a moment when we actually start using the program, it's going to make it squish all weird so it looks bad. Like that's its default. So if you go and change it to scale image to frame size and check keep aspect ratio and apply that, that is a really good idea. It makes Scribus behave itself really, really well. Otherwise, you'll find you have to go in and tell it to do that every time you put an image in, and it's a pain. It's a pain, frankly. The rest of these, I think we can leave. I mean, I haven't developed any. Let me put it this way: I haven't developed any proclivities that I recommend to anyone else with regard to the rest of those tools. But those two, the text one and the image one, naturally come up a lot when you're trying to do a poster.